this is a video that I'm pretty happy about making because, well, talks about Bioware again. But now we are reacting to Legendary Drops, who is himself talking about Bioware getting eviscerated. Now, I've already talked about this a while ago, but it's a topic that I'm very happy to talk about because I really do think that a lot of the people who were involved with Veilguard and the absolute failure that is Veilguard kinda had it coming at this point because people tried to warn them that, hey, we don't like this direction that you're taking things, and we were insulted for it. And so rather than being nice to them, I say we celebrate what's happening, and we celebrate by giving views to Legendary Drops when he talks about it. So, what's happening, my man?
I'm done. I quit. This happens every single time. I put out a video talking about some issues going on with a game or a studio, and then immediately following, things get worse, or at least from my perspective, better when it comes to Bioware.
Based.
See, because after my video talking about EA, they went out and announced, without even telling me, by the way.
That's kind of fucked up. They really should have, dialed him up and send the man an email, just let him know. Let the man know so that he can make his own video about it,
That they were going to restructure Bioware.
I think they're down to 100 people now.
Make it more lean, mean. They're going to make it more agile. Corporate speak for we're going to gut the studio in hopes these guys don't lose us any more money.
Yeah.
Gamers keep winning. All these game studios have been pumping out games that deliver no value to us whatsoever are now staring at the brink of destruction. They're staring at the void, and it's staring back at them, and that void is their wallets, their bank accounts. But it's time for us to feel empathetic. Don't you dare!
Why? They weren't empathetic towards us when we tried to explain that, hey, we don't identify with this thing. We don't identify with the ideals that you're putting in the game. We don't identify with the story that you're trying to write. We don't identify with the characters you're putting forward. Instead, they just insulted people. They called us names. They misrepresented our criticism. They acted like we were these evil monsters because we had a difference of opinion, and I don't feel bad at all because they wouldn't feel bad.
Celebrate, gamer. I see you. No. It's time to feel empathetic, or at least that's what 5 fans of Dragon Age the Veilguard, some
all 5 of them, yes,
games journalists and a few game developers believe, because we should feel bad for the situation that they put themselves in. There's a lot of people that are trying to find the smoking gun. They're trying to figure out,
Veilguard. Veilguard is the gun.
What happened here? Pointing fingers all around. How could this happen to Bioware? How could this happen to Dragon Age the Veilguard? This game was so successful for 2 days.
That came straight up. I've said it before. If you just look it up, Dragon Age Origins sales. Dragon Age lifetime sales of, oh hey, this actually has all of them. So right here, Dragon Age Origins, 3 million in 3 months. Dragon Age 2, 2 million in 2 months. Dragon Age Inquisition, 12 million, 1.5 million in the first week, and it was the fastest selling game that they ever had. They had an expectation for Veilguard. That expectation was that it would sell at least 3 million copies in the first 3 months. That's perfectly reasonable. It's a sequel, it has a pre-established fan base, and everybody on Twitter and the reviewers seem to love it. It should have gotten 6 million. It should have broken records. Instead, and by the way, everybody was acting like it was going to. Everybody before the game came out was saying that Dragon Age the Veilguard is gonna break records. Veilguard break records. It's like they were even talking about it when the game came out, that it had a 24-hour peak of 89,418, a number which has broken records for Bioware and EA. Except that disregards the fact that this is all the PC players, because all of the PC players are on Steam for Veilguard, which before they weren't. They were split on Origin and Steam. So not all the PC players were present there. But now they are.
Man,
Yeah, the game sold like shit. We tried to say it. We tried to say, "Hey, man, there's no way this game even cracked 2 million, let alone." It was unlikely that the game had cracked 1 million, let alone 2 million. And I was right. It managed to get over 1 million, I'm assuming, but we're talking about players, not games sold, being at 1.5 million. So yeah, it's
some
no way.
people are blaming the players for not buying the game. Other people are blaming the cultural climate of today's society.
The cultural climate is that people are sick of this constant, and it really kind of was constant need to push forward this ideology into the games. And unfortunately, in Veilguard, it was pushing that ideology, which, it's been in Dragon Age, right? Dragon Age has always been a very diverse and politically progressive franchise. Unfortunately, they forgot to put the Dragon Age in the Dragon Age game, and so all it had was the politics.
People are blaming economics, but I think that they're all looking in the wrong places. They're not thinking about it the way that they should, and I think it's time that we set them straight because BioWare didn't just wind up in this position. It was led there. Dragon Age the Veilguard, while critically successful, was a commercial failure. Yet another lesson in that if critics like something, if we don't want it and we don't buy it, well, what they say doesn't really matter all that much. Now, as I mentioned in a previous video, EA ended up telling their investors that Dragon Age the Veilguard only engaged 1.5 million players since its launch, and they were expecting 3 million players and reportedly 10 million players by the end of the game's first year.
Perfectly reasonable.
Something that not a lot of people have taken notice of is the fact that they said engaged 1.5 million players.
That does not mean sold copies.
It's very specific language, meaning that it's not reflective of what Dragon Age the Veilguard's actual sales are. It's just how many people bought it, reviewed it, played it as a demo, or played it through EA's subscription service, meaning that the real sales for this game are likely far lower than the number that was announced. Which is absolutely devastating for a studio like BioWare because from an executive perspective, they don't have any passive income. They don't have any live service games that are generating revenue for that studio. The only income that they have is from their game sales, and we're a ways off before they release their next game, which means not only has BioWare not made up the money for their decade-long development costs for Dragon Age the Veilguard, but they don't even have anything to soften the blow.
Yes, which is why they're firing everybody. Dragon Age is dead. Like, the only people that are left in BioWare are the people who are probably working on Mass Effect, because every writer from Dragon Age is gone. The ones that are left are the Mass Effect ones. And they kind of made a Twitter post. Wait. Mass Effect director Twitter about Veilguard. Let me see if I can find the thing. Like, this Twitter post is basically saying, yeah, man, they fucked up big time. They fucked up big time. We're not going to fuck up big time because they didn't know what they were doing and we do. That's roughly what this translates to. They fucked up and we're not gonna because we actually know how to do our jobs.
So from EA's perspective, this studio is doing nothing other than costing them money, which makes sense as to why layoffs would soon follow the game's failure. Now that all makes sense. You have to staunch the bleed, and you should probably fire the people that were responsible for making you bleed in the first place. I mean,
it's why I think that their decision to fire the writers, their decision to fire those people was a very good decision. Now, I don't think it's good that Corrine Bush has already been hired by Wizards of the Coast, which has happened and ruined my day when I found out, but hey, it happens.
I mean, that's a pretty common sense approach. However, common sense isn't so common in gaming anymore, and there are those who are pretty upset over this studio's layoffs. In an article from PC Gamer written by Harvey Randall titled "On a Pirate Ship, They Toss the Captain Overboard," Larian, head of publishing, tears into EA after BioWare layoffs waste institutional knowledge.
I mean, I guess I think that tossing the captain overboard when he consistently gets you into fights you're gonna lose is a good idea, though, right? Like, if the captain sucks dick, right? Like, actual fucking cock. Yeah, throw the captain overboard.
A profit drop doesn't mean a closed shop. Harvey writes, so Bioware isn't going to be making a new Dragon Age game anytime soon. Maybe
I mean, they already weren't gonna.
ever, depending on how things go.
That would be a good thing.
After Dragon Age the Veilguard underperformed, much of its team, including senior members who had been making Dragon Age games for a while, were shuffled around or laid off. This isn't necessarily out of nowhere, as quite accurately called by a consultant and former Bioware vet, Mark Dara, almost prophetically, this marks the first time the studio has only had one major project to focus on. He rather optimistically stated that these devs would find their way to other EA studios and that the challenge would be involved in trying to get them back. Turns out, he was right, a lot of them are just gone entirely.
Probably the ones that needed to be gone.
Regardless of my thoughts on the game's writing, plenty of the staff
The game's writing was ass.
now departing have made good stuff in the past.
Yeah. In the past.
Rick Weeks, for instance, wrote frickin' Moradin in Mass Effect 2 and 3, as well as Iron Bull and Solus in Inquisition, two characters I like very much. The foibles of Veilguard haven't left me irate so much as a little despondent, confused, and wondering whether just scrapping decades of talent in a purge is the right move at all.
I mean, if they're not going to use it anymore, and EA very much prefers to make passive income games, right? Multiplayer games where they can just foist a ton of microtransactions on players and just trust that that money will come back to them, right? That's the type of thing that EA prefers to make. So at that point, yeah, they're going to get rid of the RPG people because that's not the people that they want. And they've been trying to get rid of the RPG people for a while, but the RPG people kept making money, and so they couldn't get rid of them, right? And so Veilguard was both a massive failure that deserved immediate punishment, because if after 10 years you can't figure out how to write proper characters, yeah, maybe you got lucky. Right? So, yeah, I don't feel bad about even Trickweeks being fired, because honestly, every time that I saw Trickweeks talking about the characters of Veilguard on Twitter or anywhere else that he would talk about it, it was always the weirdest fucking thing. It was like, hey, we noticed that this character, Emmerich, doesn't have a bed in his room in the lighthouse. Why is that? And his response, instead of, oh yeah, he goes home to sleep in the necropolis. He doesn't actually like sleeping in the lighthouse for, whatever reason, right? Like, oh, he can hear all the voices of the Fade because he's attuned to that, so he doesn't like sleeping there. He prefers to sleep somewhere else. It's quieter. No, instead he says, oh, he sleeps standing up like a horse. And it's like, okay, yeah, it's a joke, it's funny, haha, can we get the real answer now?
That's a despondency that's shared by Michael Dowse, publishing director of Baldur's Gate 3, developer Larian Studios, who took to X in a series of posts last week to more or less tear into EA for letting go of so much institutional talent.
Because that's just it, right? He says they let go of institutional talent, but for them to be institutional talents, they need to be talents.
He writes, is it possible not to lay off large portions of your development teams between or after projects? Critically, retaining that institutional knowledge is key for the next game.
Absolutely, right? If they were going to make a next game. If not, yeah, just get rid of them.
It's often used as an excuse to trim fat, and to an extent, I understand that under financial pressure, but doesn't that just highlight how needless the aggressive efficiency of giant corporations is?
Yes, however, if I go to a restaurant and I order a steak medium rare, and then I pay a large amount of money for that steak, like whatever amount you would consider a normal amount, like 50% on top of that, maybe more, maybe twice as much, maybe 3 times as much, because this was a $70 game, right? A very high amount of money for this RPG. Maybe, just maybe, if the steak comes back and it's not a steak, consequences should occur. Like, maybe the chef who served me the steak, and then I said, hey, this isn't what I ordered, and then the chef comes to my table and starts insulting me, calling me names, saying I'm stupid, saying I'm dumb, saying I don't know what I'm talking about, like, doing all this stuff. Maybe there should be a consequence for that.
Douse isn't necessarily throwing stones from a glass house here. Larian is a big old studio, true, but it's something of an anomaly in the games industry. Tencent has a minority, non-voting stake in the company, but otherwise, it's completely independent and free of shareholders. Baldur's Gate 3 very much seems like a product of a studio free from those expectations, being able to take its damn time. I'd understand if they were pumping out hit after hit. Perhaps you could argue it's working, but clearly the aggressive streamlining of layoffs aren't. It's nothing but cost cutting in the most brutal of sense. It's always the people lower down on the food chain that suffer when it's clearly a strategy higher up the food chain that's causing the problem.
True, very true. This is also very true. And unfortunately, you know, the highest person responsible for all of those decisions was able to immediately get rehired.
Douse caps the post off with, on a pirate ship, they toss the captain overboard. In a second clarifying post, he adds, to make it absolutely clear, what I hate about the way layoffs are carried out is that they are done before decision makers know what to do with the studio, and not as a result of figuring out a direction. Yeah, and on a pirate ship, if the captain smelled even a hint of mutiny, they'd hang him, they'd maroon him on an island, or they'd drag them behind the ship.
You swore she'd go free! Don't dare impugn me on her, boy! I agreed she'd go free, but it was you who failed to specify when or where.
True.
Generally, almost all times, I end up agreeing with Michael Douse on a variety of different issues.
I do think that with the added context, the whole they toss the captain overboard, he means that in a pirate ship, the person to be tossed overboard in this situation is the captain, not the people rowing, or not the people doing the rigging and the general work in the pirate ship, right? You get rid of the person who constantly steers you wrong. So he's actually advocating for throwing the captain overboard, which they kind of did. Unfortunately, Corrine Bush got picked up by Wizards of the Coast, which I've said this multiple times, but yeah, that's just going to lean further into Wizards of the Coast being even worse.
Because he understands the industry.
Can't wait to find out more about how, you know, race mixing is racist.
And the players in a way that very few do. However, here, I have to disagree with them. Look, institutional knowledge is important. You need veteran talent to maintain the creative vision of any long-standing franchise, to refine its mechanics, to push quality forward over time.
Except that they've completely scrapped every previous Dragon Age game for Veilguard. The only way that would be relevant is if they went back and went, okay, we need to rehire the people who worked on Origins, the people who worked on these old games that were really successful as RPGs and that people really liked. We need to go hire those people, and we need to scrap Veilguard, pretend it never happened, and then just make a real RPG in the setting of Dragon Age. That's how they would succeed. Except they're never going to do that.
Larian Studios is the perfect example of that. You can see the evolution from Divinity Original Sin to Baldur's Gate 3. They didn't just make another CRPG. They took everything that they had learned from their past games and built something legendary. But that's the difference. Larian grew their talent, and their talent grew with them. Bioware, they bled out long ago. Most of Bioware's best developers were already gone before or during the development of Anthem. The moment that EA forced them to go make a live service game instead of doing what they do best, that's when it all started. BioWare's decline didn't start today. It started the moment that EA lost the people who made the studio special in the first place. And that's EA.
I'm just looking at this and getting more and more annoyed at how big the Deep Stalkers are.
Service game is the moment. He's not wrong in that. But where I disagree with Douse is that I don't think that there's any institutional knowledge that's worth keeping here in the first place. Because who exactly is BioWare today? The idea of institutional knowledge falls apart when the people that are still working on the games today aren't the same people that made them great in the first place.
Yep.
The studio is a ship of Theseus, the same name, but all of the parts have been replaced so many times that it's not the same BioWare anymore. Think about it for a second. Veilguard's game director, Corrine Bush, didn't come from RPG.
She had never even played a single Dragon Age game prior.
She came from the...
She knew nothing about the game. She knew nothing about the setting. She knew nothing about the characters. She said, Zevran, a person who mentions his father one time when you directly ask about him, and he says like one sentence about the man and then moves on because he's got nothing to say about him, because he's like almost all of his memories of parents relate to his mother. That's the person he cares about. She said he had daddy issues.
The Sims. That tells you everything you need to know about the creative direction at BioWare today. And even if there are some veteran developers that are remaining, I mean, Corrine Bush, Trick Weeks, and a few others have been with BioWare and EA for many years, but who's to say they're still worth keeping?
I mean, I'll be honest, If I was going to completely restructure, I'd get rid of the entire writing staff. All of them. Gone. Hire fans. Genuinely. Hire really talented writers who are fans of the franchise, who enjoy RPGs, who are really experienced with RPGs, who know what works, who have made it in the past. Hire those people.
Love to romanticize institutional knowledge as if it's the only thing that matters is how long someone has actually worked on a franchise. But people change, their beliefs change, their motivations change, and over time, that knowledge can turn into a poison that destroys what made a game special in the first place. Dragon Age had a lot of issues. The combat was dry, the gameplay was repetitive, but most importantly, the narrative,
The writing was so bad. Ugh. Writing was so bad, bro.
core of what makes a narrative-driven game actually work was fundamentally flawed. And that's not just a random failure, that's the direct result of your institutional knowledge turning toxic. Because the writers at Bioware didn't write a story that resonated with people anymore, because I don't think they can write a story that will resonate with people anymore. Over time, they changed as people, and I think people forget that people change. They forgot how to connect with an audience. They wrote a mature-rated game with the softest, most sanitized character portrayals imaginable. They aimed it at an undefined, non-existent, young adult audience, populating it.
God, this Lords of Fortune Aren't Thieves conversation was so cringe. I was like, is this the conversation? And yeah, it was. God fucking damn it.
With a cast of millennial, maladjusted, socially awkward archetypes who felt more like reflections of their own personal social circles than actually compelling characters. And then on top of that, they forced in divisive, socially liberal gender themes, not because it made sense to the story, not because it was actually good for the game, but because they wanted to push their own worldview into the game.
Not just that, almost every voice acting choice they made was terrible. Genuinely, like the voice actress for Tash was so poorly chosen. Like, you've got this big supposed Hulk of a savage woman, and then the fucking voice actress is some woman who thinks she's hot and could probably not pull a horny teenager if she tried.
Added nothing to the game's quality and ultimately only took away from it. At a time where gaming is more divided than ever, they doubled down on their own ideological messaging instead of focusing on telling a damn good story.
Yes. They were more... It's like I said, right? They were so focused on the message that they wanted to put in the game that they forgot that it needs to go in a game, right? They forgot the game. They forgot the engaging part. They forgot the vocabulary of Dragon Age. Completely threw it out. Instead, they put their own into the game. Stupid. They forgot the entire setting of Dragon Age was already pre-existing, and so they just made it up as they went, and it ended up looking and feeling generic. They wanted it to be as modern as it could be, and instead it just looks like shit. Like, look at this woman. This woman right here that I'm covering with the camera. Right here. Look at her. Tell me that she looks like a dock worker. Like she was born in a dock, and her parents were dock workers, and she's the daughter of dock workers. She doesn't. This woman looks like a nobleman. They fucked up in her characterization badly. This woman is supposed to be your expert in ancient elven technology. She barely knows how to work a fucking mirror. She barely knows how to work anything. And yet the game constantly tries to portray her as an expert, while also going out of its way to show that she's a bumbling buffoon. We've got Davrin here, our Grey Warden, and yet he's only relevant because of his griffin. We've got Tash here, our dragon-hunting treasure hunter, and they were more concerned about driving home the fact that she's not actually a treasure hunter, she's actually an archaeologist, and she's not actually a dragon hunter, she's a dragon connoisseur. Also, she's non-binary. That's really important for her story. In fact, almost all of her character arc is built around her being non-binary. And I'm sorry, but we have better shit to do than deal with that. We're dealing with the fucking end of the world. Notice how I didn't talk about Emmerich. He's perfect. Harding shouldn't have been here. It should have been Sandal. And yes, Lucanus, we get it. You like coffee.
They believe that their perspectives, their experiences, and their beliefs mattered more than the needs of the audience or the financial survival of their own co-workers. And when a studio starts prioritizing personal agendas over player engagement, over financial stability, over creative integrity, there is only one outcome. failure. So why
I was gonna say it, but he said it first. Yep.
should we mourn the loss of that institutional knowledge? Why would you want to keep people around who actively killed the very studio that they're working for? If a studio's leadership and long-term developers become so disconnected from their audience, so lost in their own ideological echo chamber, then what value does that knowledge have anymore? None. Absolutely none. Not a single drop of value.
It's like I said, institutional talent is important so long as it's talent, so long as those people are actually making the next game better. These people were fired not to cut costs. That's not why they were fired. They were fired because they were incompetent. They were fired because they made a bad game. They were fired because they weren't wanted anymore. Not by the company, not by the stakeholders, but by the fans, the actual fans who buy things. Because Veilguard was an experiment. It was an experiment. They were experimenting to see what happens if we make a game where the target audience is Twitter weirdos. People who dwell on Twitter, people who do not go outside, people who only exist through sexually explicit Twitter. That's it. That's all they were targeting. Just fantasy Twitter and those people. Do you know what happened to the vast majority of the accounts that were advocating for Veilguard, that were saying it was going to be an amazing game? They shut down. They're gone. They no longer exist. I followed so many of those accounts. They were so embarrassed they shut down. Accounts that had been around for over a decade at this point, because they were created before Inquisition a lot of the times. Completely. They're gone. They gave up. They no longer want anything to do with it. Why? Because they were embarrassed. Because they thought the game was going to be good, and then the game came out and it was shit. And they were saying, oh my god, this is going to be the best game ever, it's going to be better than Baldur's Gate, it's going to be better than this, it's going to be better than that, it's going to be better than everything else. And then the game comes out and they go silent. And then a week passes and they start saying stuff like, well, actually, Origins was really good. Origins was better than this by far. Origins was, in fact, the best Dragon Age game. All these stories that were set up in Inquisition, no. Origins was the best. Origins was better than this. Origins was the best Dragon Age game by far. And yeah, we still have some holdouts that say, Dragon Age 2 is better in my heart. Dragon Age Inquisition is better in my heart. But everybody's saying that Origins is better now because Origins was better. Because Origins had heart. Origins had that thing, that flame that can actually light the fire that becomes a franchise. And Veilguard didn't. Veilguard was a bucket of water, when what was needed was that flame that would burn brightly and elevate the franchise. That's what they wanted to be, and that's not what they were ever going to be, because rather than wanting to actually create something, rather than going, hey man, look, what we're trying to make here, it's not going to relate to Dragon Age at all, so let's just make our own thing. They went, look, what we're making here isn't something that's going to sell on its own, so we need the Dragon Age game attached to it. That's what we need. We need that established audience so we can leech off of them. Except this has happened so many times that now players are very conscious of this stuff. They're aware that it happens, and so they're not going to let it happen to them.
I am so sick and tired of this narrative that's being peddled that firings and layoffs are immediately a bad thing in this industry. We have an industry that is running to the defense of people that are bad at their job, that are putting the livelihoods of their fellow coworkers at risk at every single given turn.
It feels so good to watch a video where he's just saying all the things that I've already said, and he's basically just like, yeah. And by the way, I said this shit days ago, if not weeks ago, right? This video came out today, so like, no way it's pre-watched, right? But it just feels so good. So like, I could literally just sit here and nod my head yes every time he opens his mouth, and the message would be the same.
Have to route that out. Simple as that. Done. End of conversation. Sure, EA has had their hand in this. I'm not going to pretend like they haven't.
Absolutely, EA had their hand in it, but like at the same time, does it matter? A good writer makes do. A good game designer makes do. Like, how many games have come out where it's like, man, oh, I just skip all the cutscenes because the story's ass, but the gameplay is really good. It happens. The reverse happens too. But at the end of the day, like Dead Space 3, story was good. I enjoyed the story of Dead Space 3. I think at the same time, the gameplay could have been a lot better. I think that the multiplayer features were really bad. I think that the things that they did to hide story behind co-op was really fucking bad. But at the same time, the game was okay. It didn't sell because they were kind of breaking their genre rather than leaning it's kind of the same thing as Veilguard, right? Rather than advocating for the old audience and saying, hey guys, look, that thing you really like, there's more of it, they went, fuck the old audience. We need a new audience, which never works.
They are the ones that didn't hold on to the knowledge, to the talent that that studio had for many years. They let those people go. They made decisions that made those people leave. But when it comes to this decision to fire the writing staff of
Yes, this decision was right. This time, right. Broken clock.
Dragon Age the Veilguard and its leadership, no, this is common sense. This isn't heavy-handed. This isn't a quick decision. No, you recognized a problem and you got rid of it. Simple as that. And to be honest with you, they had to do this. They had to show the audience, they had to show the players, they had to show their investors that they still have value in BioWare, that they still value BioWare's reputation. And from my perspective, this actually gives me more faith in Mass Effect 5. Because a lot of people miss this. The director of Mass Effect 5 was already trying to distance themselves before Dragon Age the Veilguard even came
That is true. That is very true.
out. I talked about this in a video way, way early on, but when people are asking about the writing, when people are asking about the themes, when people are asking about the art style, they said, no, we are two completely different teams. We have two completely different plans. We're about grit and
He straight up said we have nothing to do with it.
realism, and that's what we want. That's what I want.
Yeah. The Mass Effect people have already seen the failure of Veilguard, right? They've already learned this lesson, and they didn't fail so hard as Veilguard. I guarantee that the budget of Veilguard was like between 200 and 500 million. I guarantee it. And if the game sold... I know it didn't, but if the game sold 1.5 million copies, it probably made around 70-something million in profit, roughly, right? That's my guess. At least I think that was like off the top of my head, just the math. Around 80 something million, right? I said 70 something, 80 something million in profits. So yeah, you lost a lot of money. Over 100 million at least. That's assuming it's in the lower end of 200 million. But it's probably not, right? There was a lot of marketing. There was a lot of stuff around that game that they really wanted the game to succeed, and I think the game failed so fucking hard, and it's delicious.
And the thing is, we're talking about firing that team from an executive perspective, or even just from an onlooker's perspective. Given today's social political climate, given today's political climate, given the way that game received so much backlash, given how disconnected it was and the themes that it included, that writing team, that leadership likely wouldn't just lay their head down. No, they would feel emboldened. They push even harder in the next game because they would want to fight back against the perceived enemy that they have.
Yeah, and at that point, it's like you can't have that person anymore. When it comes to this sort of thing, it's like I guarantee that there is a string of emails, internal emails, that is just, hey man, I'm seeing that that this was really poorly received. Is that okay? Is everything okay? You sure this is gonna do well? Yeah, it's gonna do well. Trust me, it's gonna do well. Okay. There's probably like 50 different emails of people going, trust me, bro. And the consequence of that is you get fired on the spot as soon as you fail.
That's exactly.
And they didn't just fail. They failed hard, right? The expectation was within this year, they needed 10 million. That was the expectation, right? That means they fucked up. They fucked up really badly, right? The expectation was 10 million by the end of the year, which is still less than, Origins Inquisition. Pretty sure it's less than Dragon Age 2. First year of sales for Dragon Age 2. I'm not sure. Dragon Age 2 sold more than 1 million in less than 2 weeks. But yeah, I can't really see any data on how much it sold later. But yeah, it's like it really is
Really
embarrassing.
what they would do. And they would waste even more money. They'd probably have even more people lose their jobs, and it would sacrifice even more of the studio's reputation. That would be the end result. But they recognized that it was an issue, and they got rid of it. Simple as that. And
Yeah, you cut off gangrenous limbs.
there's nothing wrong with that. You know, there's a lot of people that are upset over the firings, a lot of people that are upset over the layoffs.
Yeah, dumb people.
And the funny thing is that none of it actually has to do with Dragon Age the Veilguard. None of it actually has to do with the quality of the game or anything like that. It's the fact that you have folks that are out there that believed a multi-billion-dollar company was an ally.
I saw this Scottish lady, I assume, talking about how she was realizing for the first time that EA wasn't their friend, that EA didn't care. And it's like, of course EA doesn't care. Why would they? You're a no one. You're money to them. They've gotten your money. They don't care about you anymore. You could die tomorrow and they wouldn't care. Every single one of the people who bought their games would die tomorrow and they would say, well, they already bought the game, so what do we care? Right? That's how they see an RPG game. It's like, oh, they already bought it. We don't care. We just need to make them play the game for 2 hours. And after that, I don't give a fuck. The game could be completely unplayable after 2 hours. So long as we can get people to play for those first 2 hours. That's all they care about.
It had more to do. They look at this as an attack against their beliefs, as an attack against their identity, when it's just a company making a smart business decision.
Well, to be fair, the smart business decision is to cut out their ideology, because at the end of the day, the thing that led them to this situation was them going along with this ideology when the general public's opinion of this ideology is that it's cringe. And they know, and I know, oh my god, he said the word cringe, that's so dumb, that's so L-Riz, bro, whatever, right? The word cringe really does mean cringe in this situation, because you really look at it, you go, because that's all it is. It's like, when Tash goes, "Rrrr," it's like, get the fuck away from me. Like, ew. They got the most unsexy sounding woman to play a character that they wanted to lean the most into her sexual her sexual attraction. And then they made the character not that attractive too, which is a problem, right? Just so bad. And the only people who found it attractive were, honestly, people who are so deep in this ideology. And when I say attractive, I don't just mean the romance, I mean the character in general, right? So deep in this ideology that you cannot trust their opinion at all, because it's not an impartial opinion. Their opinion is based off the fact of, oh, I agree with this thing, therefore good. It's not, yes, people outside of me will agree with it, therefore good.
Why do people want multi-billion-dollar companies to be moral arbiters? It
Because they have power.
makes no sense to me.
Oh, it's very sensical. It's very logical. You want the people in power to agree with you. That's it. And these people believe that the corporations are the ones empowered to do everything. And so they want the corporations to believe the things that they believe, so that the corporations will use their money to give them power.
And they don't have any interest in being one in the first place. And people starting to wake up to that now.
Yeah.
I've come across a lot of comments from developers, journalists, and players lamenting at the supposed cultural impact that is lost with the exodus of Dragon Age the Veilguard's writing team, BioWare's writing team. One streamer, for example, dramatically
Yeah, this is the person I was talking about, yeah.
claimed that Veilguard failed because it chose to represent. That's why it's being attacked. And now that the staff is gone,
No, Veilguard failed because that's all it was doing instead of being a good game.
they don't think that BioWare has the right intentions anymore. But my question is, what intentions should a game studio have other than delivering a quality product? None. There shouldn't be anything else. Games are not meant to be your ally. They are not meant to fight for you. They are meant to entertain and make money. That's it.
Yes, but entertainment can be used to push politics, can be used to define culture. Hell, 90% of culture is entertainment. It's movies, it's songs, it's dances, it's games. Not just video games, like hopscotch, like traditions. That's all it is. That's culture. It's entertainment. Entertainment does define culture. And so these people want the entertainment to define culture in the way that they want. But they don't understand that you can't force this stuff, right? The entertainment will only be able to define culture if people play it for a very long time. That's why Dragon Age defined culture. That's why Berserk defined culture. That's why Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 defined culture. That's why Baldur's Gate 3 was able to define culture. Baldur's Gate 3 was everything that Veilguard wanted to be. It had all the same politics. It made all of the same points. It said all of the same things, except it did it well. And so the end result is, with Baldur's Gate 3, you have a game that sells, that breaks records, that even nowadays, if we go and look at Baldur's Gate 3 charts, I want to look at the charts, you're going to open it up, and it's going to look like this. And meanwhile, Veilguard didn't beat those numbers even when it launched. Okay, it did beat those numbers when it launched, but look at it now. And then you look at Inquisition, and Inquisition, has a smaller peak right now, but holy shit, are these numbers? Oh, it's the Saturday, yeah. So yeah, an old game, a very old game by any standard, and a lot of these players are on console. So it's like you realize very quickly that Veilguard was a complete and utter failure. Complete failure. Nothing about Veilguard was good.
Some of BioWare's writers may have seen themselves as
The ending was good because it was ending.
stewards of justice, pushing personal beliefs through.
And I don't mean oh, finally the game's over. No, it was actually doing the climax, and I think that the climax was good. Unfortunately, it's the reverse problem of Mass Effect 3 before it got patched, right? It was Mass Effect 3 was 99% amazing, 1% terrible. And then this game was 99% awful, 1% good.
Through their work, but marketing and executives, you are nothing more to them than a consumer to be manipulated and milked for money. And yet, people will defend garbage video games.
By the way, I will say, I see a lot of people who were going around saying, "Wow, Warrior looks so boring. I'm gonna play Rogue. Rogue seems so much more engaging." I'm watching this Rogue play, and this looks so fucking dull, so fucking stagnant. I could not imagine playing this for a whole video game.
Games, not because they're good, not because it respects the franchise or its legacy, but because it represents something they want to see in the world.
Did he just teleport?
The franchise or its legacy, but because it represents
Oh my god.
something they want to see in the world, regardless of its quality. There's this sense of defeat among certain groups, not because the game failed, but because the pendulum is swinging in the other direction. For years, certain beliefs have been pushed aggressively and across all media forms, gaming, movie, music, television, whatever it might be. And those who disagreed were told to shut up and take it, even if their concerns were about quality and not ideology. I've seen this firsthand. I know exactly how frustrating it can be to simply ask for a good game and receive nothing but hate and vitriol in response. I've seen
Well, yeah, because if you're just asking for a good game, you're saying that you don't care about the message, and if you don't care about the message, you're an enemy. It's like fascist 101. It's the same tactic as the communists, right? If you're not with them, you're against them, and so every negative thing that happens to you is fair game.
Reddit threads dissecting my entire personality, applying beliefs to me that I don't even hold just because I dared to criticize a game. And now what? Those same people that have spent years calling other people bigots for criticizing a game's quality are learning firsthand that their opinions are not the popular ones. The gaslighting isn't working. It didn't work. Why? Because Dragon Age the Veilguard didn't fail because of its themes. It failed because it was...
By the way, those executions, that's terrible. That's terrible. You want to know how they make a good Dragon Age game? Like, seriously, make me the game director, EA. I will guide your studio to making a good Dragon Age game, and I need 2-3 years. Give me 2 to 3 years, and I'll give you a Dragon Age game that will put Baldur's Gate 3 to shame.
It was a bad game. And what I don't understand is, why are people wanting to settle for bad representation when you could demand better? How is Tosh a good representation of anyone?
Oh no, Tash is a perfect representation of every single one of these creeps. She is the perfect representation. She's aggressive, she's rude, and she's a hypocrite.
Just like I wouldn't want the stereotype of every white guy being a villain in movies, television shows, and games, why would you want poorly written characters reinforcing negative stereotypes of the identities and communities that you seem to care about?
Tash would be transphobic.
Shouldn't the goal have been to,
as proven by the fact that she refuses to call people by what they want to be referred to as,
actually have characters that resonate with people, characters people actually like?
Well, yes, but that's the problem, right? If you don't like Tash, it's not because she's a bad character. If you don't like Tash, it's because Tash is non-binary. Now, why can you make this immediate translation? Because the only defining characteristic of Tash is that she's non-binary. They sell her as a, treasure-seeking dragon hunter. But she is neither a treasure seeker nor a dragon hunter. And she goes out of her way to let you know this as soon as you talk to her, right? The only thing that stays is the non-binary thing. Like, she's wearing the fucking red ropes of the Kunari. He's like, oh, so you follow the Kun. No, you don't get to tell me what to do. Okay. My bad, I guess. Rude of me to assume that you wore things because they were relevant.
But instead of asking for better...
Tash is, funnily enough, Tash is textbook definition of bad characterization.
People are instead choosing to blame the audience for rejecting a bad game. I found a Reddit post titled, Chuds Ruined Bioware.
Cute. Hope you assholes are happy for ruining the careers of many employees. They did it to themselves. If you didn't like it, all you had to do was ignore and let the ones who do enjoy it. But you had to review bomb and hate grift the game, and now Bioware is on its last legs. You almost feel so proud and are edging to Asmongold videos in celebration of EA gutting Bioware. First of all, I don't edge to Asmongold videos, I edge to Pick Sparkle videos. Just a thing. But second of all, the game didn't get review bombed. The game didn't get review bombed at all. It didn't. It just quite simply didn't. That is not a thing that happened.
Which said, hope you assholes are happy for ruining the careers of many employees. If you didn't like it, all you had to do was ignore it and let the ones who do enjoy it be. But no, you had to review bomb and hate grift the game, and now BioWare is on its last legs. You all must feel so proud and are edging to Asmongold videos in celebration of EA gutting BioWare. And in that same thread, I found the perfect response. Chuds did not ruin BioWare.
Oh, I'm surprised this thing got any amount of likes.
The anti-woke crowd tried attacking Baldur's Gate 3, but it was a solid game, and it's doing amazingly. The only people who ruined BioWare are EA and BioWare themselves. Giving the anti-woke crowd credit for this only emboldens them and makes them believe that their tantrums work. Yes, the anti-woke crowd is annoying, but at the end of the day, while you and many others love Veilguard, plenty of people did not, and for valid reasons. It's okay that you liked a game that wasn't a commercial success, but blaming that on the wrong people does no good. BioWare should be held accountable for their own failures.
45 replies. Guaranteed people call this person a Nazi.
The funny thing is, players did exactly what the original poster asked. They didn't like the game, they didn't want to play the game, and as a result, they didn't buy it, and that's why Dragon Age the Veilguard failed.
Yep.
And the reply is completely right. Baldur's Gate 3 included almost all the exact same themes, if not even more flexibility in choice and expression, yet with what little backlash it had, none of it had any effect because it was a good game.
And I do want something to be remembered here, right? Veilguard sold over 1 million copies. That's a lot of money. That's $56 million in just money going to the company. 56 million. And you want to convince me that that's too little money? It's not. It's not. This game would have been a success if they had kept the costs down. Look at this fucking game and tell me that this is worth $200 million. Look at it and tell me it's worth $100 million. It's not. This game is barely worth $10 million in development. Barely. With modern technology. It's fucking barely worth that. They say, oh, things are getting more expensive because of inflation. Bull dick. All right? It's not.
That's what really matters here. While I do think that social ideology definitely played a role in Dragon Age the Veilguard's failure, I don't view it as some culture war.
Cultural ideology did play a massive role, but not in the game, right? The problem wasn't that they put, and I said it a bunch of times, right? The problem wasn't that the game was woke. No, the problem was that the studio was woke. They had nothing but DEI hires. They had nothing but diversity and inclusion hires. That's all they had. And so when that's all you have, that's all you can give, right? In the same way that a character can only be as intelligent as the person writing the character, a character can only be as deep as the person writing them. If the person writing the character is shallow and has nothing to offer, that character cannot have anything that the writer doesn't. That's why it's so important that writers have experiences and have a lot of context and know a lot of different things, because if you don't, you can't write about it.
Or victory, it's a customer victory. It's proving that players aren't putting up with slop anymore. But there's another major reason as to why Dragon Age the Veilguard failed, and some people want to forget this. It's because it's not the game that we were supposed to get. Dragon Age the Veilguard was a game without identity. It started off as a live service game built to be the next multiplayer RPG because EA wanted to turn Dragon Age into another Destiny, but when the backlash for live service games hit the industry like a sledgehammer, they scrambled to turn it back into a single-player RPG. And
you can see it all over the game.
When you have a project that's built for one thing and abruptly pivoted to something else, you have to ask yourself who's going to fix it. You need strong leadership. You need a creative director that understands how to bring everything together. And
instead they got Corinne Bush, who was a designer.
Understands RPG
who had worked on Sims before.
Mechanics, combat design, storytelling, and pacing. But BioWare didn't have that. Instead,
you need somebody with like years of experience in like D&D and other RPGs and stuff like that. And instead you got somebody from The Sims.
They put the wrong people in charge, people who, rather than fixing a game's fundamental issues, chose to focus entirely on the story that they wanted to tell, on the message that they had to deliver. They ignored the gameplay, they ignored the mechanics, they ignored the world building and player choice. Unlike Baldur's Gate 3, that didn't do any of those things, they made sure all of those things were the most important thing in their design. Their message became the only thing that mattered. Notice something, that the designers, the environmental artists, the sound techs, the gameplay developers, these aren't the people that got fired. They were the ones that got repositioned because their failure wasn't in how the game looked or functioned. The failure was in the fact that none of that mattered to their leadership. None of the parts fit together, and the customers were delivered something that was an incohesive Frankenstein of a game where all of the effort went into bad writing and poor messaging. And that's why this was all inevitable. Because here's the thing, I don't care if a game includes themes that I personally disagree with, and I don't think a lot of people do either. I don't care if it explores politics, gender, religion, or whatever else a writer wants to tackle. As long as the game is fun and engaging, I'll play it. At the end of the day, I just want to enjoy a good game. That's all I've ever wanted. I think that's what most people want. But when a game's themes aren't woven naturally into its world, when they lack nuance, when they feel like a cudgel rather than a conversation, and the gameplay takes a back seat to all of that, well, I don't see that as an ideological attack. I see that just as a bad video game. I don't see these developers as some grand ideological enemy pushing an agenda. I just see them being shit at their jobs.
Yeah. It's not about the ideology. The game just sucked.
That's what so many people fail to understand. It's not about representation, it's about execution. You can tackle any subject, any theme, and if it's done poorly, if it's forced, if it sacrifices storytelling and gameplay in favor of preaching, well, then it fails. Not because people are intolerant, not because people weren't ready for it, but because it was badly written and poorly implemented. I'm sick of these...
I fucking hate Tash's facial expression, so...
cultural battle lines being drawn every single time a game flops. I'm sick of developers and media drawing those lines. I'm sick of players and people defending these games and using inclusivity as a shield from criticism. A bad game is a bad game, period. That's it. There's no other reason behind it. No amount of social messaging, no amount of good intentions, no amount of defense from games journalists is going to change that, because players are done settling. They don't care about your message. They don't care about your characters, and they sure as the hell don't care about your employees if the game sucks. And Dragon Age the Veilguard, well, that game sucked. In one of my last streams, I ended up having a AAA developer reach out and talk to me for a little bit, and they told me that in all their years of experience, they've worked across the entire industry, whether it was Sony, whether it was Activision, all these big names. They said that never do you see people lose their job if they're actually good at their job. 12 years in the industry, they never saw a single person that was good at their job lose their job. They said anytime you see these layoffs, it is almost always people that are underqualified or bad at their job. That's it. They went on to then say that the people that are still at Bioware, the people that were working on Dragon Age the Veilguard that still have a job somehow, well, they knew exactly what was going on, what went wrong with Dragon Age, but they likely couldn't talk about it. They couldn't speak up. They had to couch their criticism in soft language.
Yeah, and that's a problem, right? If you're not allowed to engage with the problem directly, if you're not allowed to speak up and say, hey, I think you're doing this, this, and this wrong. A, B, and C are wrong. You need to fix A, B, and C if you want this to be successful. And you get shunned for it inside of the company, you're not going to talk about it. You're not going to speak up. You're going to be quiet, and you're going to be far more critical in the future when you're given the chance to actually be critical. That's why people get radicalized, right? That's why people have gotten so radicalized against this movement, right? Because for a very long time, you weren't even able to say, hey, man, I don't think this is entirely correct. I don't think this is entirely true. I don't think it's appropriate to say these things around this type of person. I don't think that's cool. I don't think that's cool. I don't think it's correct. I don't think it's true. Saying any of that was enough for you to immediately get ostracized, immediately get removed from public spaces. And so the pendulum swings the other way. So people get more and more hostile against these types of movements. And the end result is always negative for the people who have been abusing power, because they were given power and they abused it. And so this is a result. It's normal. It happens every time. Every time. I don't think there's ever been a time where it didn't happen.
Toxic positivity. And, while ideology and social beliefs might have something to do with it, I'm sure there is an impact there for sure. Poor leadership is a plague to a lot of these companies. And that's likely exactly what EA was targeting here. Chuds didn't kill BioWare. BioWare killed BioWare. I'm hoping that with all the big failures we saw in 2024, that a lot of these studios and these publishers can see the markers for failure. They're recognizing them better and able to reposition and change their games appropriately to be successful in the coming years. You would have to, because there's just way too many instances, way too many examples of what players don't want and what players do want.
Yeah, and it's like the whole thing. I do think that there is a problem with a lot of PC gamers where people will say what they don't want, but they won't say what they do want. But I also think that there's plenty of people who say what they do want. And all you have to do is listen to them. That's all. Just listen to them. It's like, hey, I'm going to put this in the video game. Do you like that? No? Okay. What do you like? Oh, you like that? Okay. Oh, you like things like Stellar Blade? Okay. You like the girls to be hot and the combat to be bombastic? Okay, we'll do that then. If we're gonna go for action combat, that's what we'll do. You want I've said this a million times before. When you make a character, the character either needs to be hot or they need to be interesting. Right? I don't know if I've said it in a video, but whatever. Either hot or interesting. Look at Stellar Blade. She's hot, so we move on. Look at Witcher 3. Geralt's hot. We move on. Look at fucking Darksiders 2. Death looks interesting and hot. So it's good, right? You look at World of Warcraft. Almost all the characters in Classic were hot or interesting. It's as simple as that, right? The fact that this has been lost to so many people is Overwatch, right? Overwatch versus fucking Concord, and then Marvel Rivals. Like, they are leaning in on the hotness, right? Like, all the characters are hot. And when you lean into that design, like, it's either hot or it's interesting, you don't have to worry about anything else. Because it's already caught somebody's attention. And this is just character design, right? They failed at that too in Veilguard. None of the characters were interesting, and none of them. Well, Emmerich was interesting, but that was it. Like, it was Emmerich. He was interesting. No one else. And at that point, it's like, oh, it's you somehow managed that accidentally. Guaranteed it was accidental. Guaranteed they can't do that again. So yeah, and actually, I think it was because of Trick Weeks. Because I think Trick Weeks wrote Emmerich. Who wrote Emmerich? Nope, it was Sylvia Fekete. She wrote Emmerich and Josephine. And apparently she was also let go.
And I'm hoping they're learning the lesson. I feel like a prophet, man. It's so crazy to be this far into the future now. I guess not really. It was only like, what, back in, when did this game come out? Like November?
3 months ago.
Or September or something like that?
November.
I put out a
like the last day of September.
Tweet right after all of the reviews went up, and I was like, there is no way. You guys are trying to protect this game. You gave it to reviewers early that you knew really liked it already. You kept it away from the people that you...
And I guarantee, like, they didn't give it to reviewers that really liked it. They gave it to reviewers who agreed to say they really liked it. There's a difference there, because as soon as all the other reviews came out, all the other reviews were scathing, those reviewers started to amend their previous statement of, yeah, you know, I kind of was hesitant about this, so yeah, maybe I should have given it like a 6 instead of a 9.
You knew didn't like it, and then you wanted to protect its launch. Give it a positive light. Try to get more people to buy it. And I was like, there is no way this is going to work. I cannot believe that you guys are even doing this in the first place. And it didn't work. Maybe it did for some people. I actually feel really, really bad now that I think about it. And also, games journalists need to feel bad. Shame on you guys. For the people that were out there that were defending this game, standing in front of it, shielding it from criticism, shielding it from all the people saying that it wasn't going to be worth their money, you likely led some people to go buy that game, and they hated it. And they wasted their money. Because they went on your word, because they trusted you.
And that causes people to lose faith in those reviewers. That's why so many reviewers who are easily bought or intimidated into giving a certain review, they are losing a lot of their credibility.
Gross. Anyway. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you guys did enjoy the video, like the video, subscribe to the channel, share it to your friends, comment down below. Join the Discord if you guys haven't.
I really did like that video, mostly because that video was basically just saying all the stuff that I've been saying. All the stuff that I said about Veilguard, all the stuff I said about Bioware, all of that, he was just saying that shit too. He was just saying it again. And that felt good. That felt vindicating. It titillated my titties. You know what I'm saying? Felt real good to see. Felt real good to... I like this video. I like this video a lot. Make sure to like. I'm gonna drop his video in the description, so give him a like too. Give him a subscribe if you aren't already. I'll see you guys next time. Have a good one. Cheers.